Hello, my name is Kanae. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today to do my March 2022 wrap-up. Okay, so in March I read 21 books for a total of 7,537 pages. Crazy. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But it's what happened. So here we are. I'm just gonna kind of do these, I guess, from lowest rating to highest rating, because I don't have all the books physically here, because I've been utilizing my library like crazy. So first off, I have the final installment in the Royal Diary series. This one is Weetamoo, Heart of the Pocasets. I don't remember who authored this one. Hold on. Patricia Clark Smith. This one was interesting. I didn't rate this because I don't rate middle grade because I am not the audience. But this one was particularly interesting because the Native American tribe in question here, I think, oh my god, I honestly don't remember. Wampanoag. I hope I'm saying that right. Anyway, the Wampanoag people and most native cultures don't have a written tradition, they have an oral tradition. So it was very tricky to write a pretend diary for this particular princess, although princess was not actually her title, but she was the daughter of the highest ruler of her people, so basically princess. So how they tried to frame this is that her parents wanted her to grow like some introspection, to really think about things, because they knew that potentially one day she would be the leader of her people. So in her thinking, that's the writing of the diary, but she is also drawing pictures on birch bark to help herself remember, so you get kind of some pictures in here too, very simple pictures. But I thought it was a nice way to kind of bridge that gap there, to create a diary for someone who would not have kept a diary nor known how to write. So I'm happy with this one. I'm very excited that I've finally finished the entire Royal Diary series. I have some other things coming, you'll see. You'll see. Because I am just really enjoying collecting these series that were just so important to me when I was a child. Okay, moving on. We have a 3-star read, because there was nothing lower than a 3-star this month, so that's fun. This is Ancient Near East, a captivating guide to ancient civilizations of the Middle East, including regions such as Mesopotamia, ancient Iran, Egypt, Anatolia, and the Levant, by Captivating History. I think Captivating History actually is like a YouTube channel, and they started putting together just little books, and I picked one up because they weren't that expensive. This wasn't bad, it just also wasn't that good. I don't know, it was just like, it had some interesting information, but it didn't really pull me in at any point. So, not terrible. I would, in fact, pick up more from this series that the Captivating History team is putting together, but it's also not like my favorite thing, so I wouldn't be prioritizing it, if that makes sense. It's very just like surface level stuff, although it's hard to find actual information on the ancient Near East, so I understand why maybe it's not super in-depth, because there just isn't that much there that's actually known. So they talk about stuff that is thought to be based on these reasons, and they talk about things that have just been like mythologized over the years and aren't actually true. So it's pretty interesting in that respect, and I think I'm actually more interested in checking out their YouTube channel than reading more of the books. So anyway, I'll see if I can find it and I'll link it in the description box. So if you are interested, you can check them out too. Okay, next up is a book that I actually finished quite recently. I gave it 3.5 stars, and then as soon as I finished, I was kicking myself for not saving it for April for the readathon. But anyway, this is The Resting Place by Camilla Sten. Camilla Sten writes, I believe, in Swedish, and this has been translated by Alexandra Fleming. I read The Lost Village last year, and I really, really enjoyed it. So as soon as I saw this one was coming out, I picked it up. I didn't get on with this one quite as well. I guess I found it to be kind of predictable, and the premise is something that is weird, but I've also read about it recently enough. So this contains a person, or this has a person who is face blind, which is bizarre because, was it Rock, Paper, Scissors? There's another thriller I read not that long ago, and it also had a person who was face blind in there. It's prosopagnosia or something like that is the medical term for it. So this woman, her name is Eleanor, she walks in on her grandmother being murdered, but because she's face blind, she can't tell the police anything about the person other than like what they were wearing. So that is unfortunate. But then she discovers that her grandma had this secret like manor house out in the middle of nowhere that she didn't know anything about. So she's sent there with a lawyer to do like an accounting of the property, I guess, for purposes of inheritance, because she has an aunt who is also still alive. So there was just some of the decisions made I just didn't get. Like, I do best with a thriller when I can understand why the protagonist is making the actions that they are. And in this one, I couldn't understand the protagonist at all, but that could be because I don't experience face blindness, so life works a little different for me, I assume. I did see somebody in, I think it was a comment on maybe Brittany's announcement video, and they were looking for translated works that also had a disability in it. And I thought this could fit the bill if you like thrillers, because I know I think it's a readathon in April as well that has to do with disabled characters and or disabled authors. So maybe keep this one in mind if you are looking to combine the two. We have a few books that fit into the 3.75 category. The first of those is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. I got this as a book of the month for February, so pretty recently. And this is just a bunch of like characters who are pretty much unhinged. That's the best way I can describe it. Our main character, I don't think we ever actually get her name, but she is a professor at this small university in upstate New York. Her husband is also a professor there. She and her husband have long had an arrangement where they can have affairs with other people, but the idea is that their family unit comes first. However, recently it came to light that the professor had been having affairs with his students. And so he is facing all kinds of things, and a lot of the students aren't sure how, a lot of the faculty too, aren't sure how they feel about his wife still teaching there as well. And it's an interesting situation, because on the one hand, she's like, why should I be punished for something that my husband did? But on the other hand, you also see how to a student it would be confusing. So she's dealing with that, and the professor who comes to take his place to teach his classes is Vladimir. Vladimir is Russian. His parents immigrated. He was born in the U.S. and he is married, but his wife has some very serious mental health issues, and they have a daughter together, and he is very stressed because he kind of feels like he's having to parent both of them. And our protagonist, whose name we never quite get, I don't want to say she kidnaps him, but like she kind of kidnaps him. And you learn this in like the first couple pages because she is like staring at him and mentions that he's cuffed to the chair. And I was like, whoa, I did not think that was going there. This is very literary fiction, very artsy. It will not be for everybody. I didn't mind it. I didn't love it, but I didn't mind it, though I will say that I have been thinking about it a lot, which tells me that perhaps at some point I may need to raise my rating, because I really can't get it out of my mind, and I don't know. It is what it is. Okay, the next book that I gave 3.75 stars to is a book that my mom actually recommended to me years ago, and I never really read it. I bought it, but I didn't read it. So I've read it now, and that is Mrs. Sherlock Holmes, The True Story of New York City's Greatest Female Detective and the 1917 Missing Girl Case That Captivated a Nation by Ricca. This book is so fast-paced. I read it in like 2 days. I could not put it down. It was one of those I got as an audiobook, and then I was listening to it while I was cooking dinner and stuff, and then I went to go to sleep, but I just wanted to read this book, but my husband was asleep, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna figure out where I was at on the audiobook and just start reading it, and I just kept reading it till like 1 a.m. So good. My problem with it is that I find the organization to be a little bit strange, and it made it somewhat hard to follow, because the title says you're following the 1917 missing girl case that captivated a nation, and you're getting some of that in like a chapter, and then you're getting more about this Mrs. Sherlock Holmes character, who's actually Grace Humiston, in other chapters, but you're getting like from the time she was in law school and how she ended up becoming like a private investigator as well as a lawyer. And like the going back and forth just got kind of confusing, and it's not really so much about that missing girl case. Like that is a lot of it, but there's a lot of book before that and there's a lot of book after that. So I think the title is a little bit misleading. It was fascinating, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed every second of it. The other thing is that Grace Humiston, she's on her second husband. So in some parts they call her Grace Quackenbos, and then in other parts that she was referred to by her maiden name, which I can't even remember now. And it's not until you get like halfway through the book that they actually give you her history. And so like I actually had to look her up and figure out what the heck her name was, because I was like, are they talking about two different people? Or what's going on? So I had to do that. And that's why it got 3.75 stars. But as far as just like content, very interesting. So, oh my god. It's like true crime but historical. And I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, the last 3.75 star book is Dead to Her by Sarah Pinborough. This was really good too. I'm trying to remember now why I marked it down to 3.75 stars. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I'll just kind of like set the scene here, I guess. So we have this woman, and she was the other woman, and in this case he actually left his wife and married her. Her name is Marcia, and they live in Savannah, Georgia, and they run in these blue-blooded circles. So aside from the fact that she just doesn't have the heritage that typical spouses in this circle have, she's also very much younger than all of them, and she's the other woman. So she doesn't quite fit in, but then her husband's boss comes back from London, and he has a 22-year-old bride. And not only that, but she is black. So in Savannah, Georgia, this very wealthy old guy brings a 22-year-old black girl and somehow thinks he's going to mold her into the perfect fit for this group. Yeah, things go awry. Yikes. But this was very, very good. I can't remember why exactly I rated this less. I think it's because I read 2 other Sarah Pinborough books this month, and I found them to be so much better that I couldn't quite rate this one as high. I think that's what it was. We got a lot of 4-star reads. A lot. We have like 7 4-star reads. Okay, so the one we're going to start with is Her Hidden Genius by Marie Benedict. This was great. This is the story of Rosalind Franklin and her contribution to discovering the helical structure of DNA. I really liked the voice that Marie Benedict gave Rosalind Franklin in this, and I really enjoyed following her through just various aspects of her scientific work and her time in Paris versus her time working in England. And she's like just post World War II, so there's still a lot of turmoil in these countries, and she's also Jewish, which adds, you know, fuel to that fire. The main thing here, though, is that she is a woman in a man's world, and people do her so dirty. Oh my god. Like, yes, I guess her attitude might have been a little off-putting, but it was off-putting because of everything she'd gone through with men not respecting her. Like, something that keeps popping up is they keep calling her Miss Franklin instead of Dr. Franklin, whereas everybody else, like all the other men, they immediately introduce them as Dr. Franklin or hello, doctor, whatever, you know? So she starts working at a laboratory called, it's King's, I can't remember where exactly it's at in England, but when she's there, she is told they want her to start photographing, or it's X-ray crystallography. It's kind of like photographs, but it's more like X-rays. Anyway, it's her job to photograph, X-ray, whatever, the structure of DNA, because at this point they don't know how DNA works with heredity. At this point, honestly, a lot of people are still thinking proteins are the basis for heredity and not DNA. So we kind of get her entrance into this world and her basically being forced into this race to discover the structure of DNA that she doesn't want to be a race, because that's not how science works for her. Interestingly, I am reading a book. I found it by chance at Barnes & Noble, and I think it's called The Secret of Life, I think. Anyway, you'll hear about it in my next wrap-up. I haven't quite finished it yet. But it is just the story of the discovery of DNA. And so much of it just in this book is spot on to how people have described the actual situations. So in this book, which is all from Rosalind's point of view, Maurice Wilkins, James Watson, and Francis Crick are like bumbling idiots, right? They're not. They're actually fairly intelligent, but to her, they all seem like morons, and she knows that they're just trying to poach her work, and she knows that she's not going to get the credit that she deserves for it. And she's absolutely right. In reality, they're all quite intelligent. The reason for the problems is that there's like serious personality mismatch, and they don't respect her because she's a woman. Like, James Watson is the worst of them all, I think. He's not dumb, he's just lazy and entitled. So for him, scientific research is best gone about if he takes everybody else's data and then comes up with the final, like, decisions and publishes. That's how he likes to practice science. Rosalind, on the other hand, doesn't like to come to conclusions without having all the data first. So I was under the impression that it was just her photograph of DNA, the A structure and the B structure, that helped them, but really it was so many calculations that she had done as well based on the photographs, and I didn't realize how many photographs she had taken from hundreds of angles, to the point that all that X-ray exposure eventually killed her. So I was just really, really thrilled by this book. I enjoyed it a lot. Okay, next up, we have The Women's History of the Modern World, How Radicals, Rebels, and Every Woman Revolutionized the Last 200 Years by Rosalind Miles. This was pretty good. Was it groundbreaking? No. I have read about most of these women. Not very many were new to me. Rosie pointed out that it was very white-focused, and I would agree with that. You do get some racial diversity, but not much. I think there's like half a chapter dedicated to black women in the United States. Like, it's not much. And Rosie had mentioned one key figure whose name I can't remember now, that she doesn't understand how that woman was left out of the conversation, given that every white woman around her was mentioned. So I do understand that. The other thing is that this is supposed to be very funny. And I guess sometimes I found it funny. Other times I like knew there was a joke there. I just wasn't getting it. So that could be on me. And then some of the sentence structure I found to be a little bit odd. I had to like go reread stuff a few times. There were a couple that like I just gave up. And I was like, I think based in context, this is what she's getting at. But it was pretty interesting. I actually don't mind the way it was structured. Which was that each chapter was not necessarily about a woman, but more like this chapter 4 is women who dared. So it's just kind of giving you things that, like adjectives that aren't usually used for women, and giving them to women. So I really enjoyed this one. Next up, I had an audiobook. This was Stalin's Daughter, The Extraordinary and Tumultuous Life of Svetlana Alliluyeva. Oh my god. I've been trying to practice saying that, but my tongue gets tripped up over all the L's. By Rosemary Sullivan. This was excellent. So a lot of people didn't even realize Stalin had a daughter, but he did, and she was the apple of his eye, and she was said to be like the only one who could bring him out of moods, you know, typical like daddy-daughter stuff. But when you start really like hindsight, looking at the games he would play with her and stuff, you can see how manipulated she was as a child. Her mother committed suicide when she was quite young, and that left her just reeling. Her father's intense paranoia all the time, and the disappearing of her family members, and just always being scared. She was very much like a broken woman who was just trying so hard to pull her life together. She had 3 children, very, very far apart in age, and at one point she defects to the United States, and that's a whole mess. But her life was just fascinating to read about, and so many people in her life like didn't quite know what to make of her, because she just at times seems like she didn't mature properly. So her behavior wasn't what you would expect of a woman of her age. But they knew that she was trying. It all came back to her life being so just dysfunctional. So she was one of those people where she would fly off the handle, and then she would come back and apologize because she realized she was wrong. So it was just very interesting as like a character study. I'd be interested to know if anyone's done like a psychoanalysis of her and written about it anywhere, because I think that'd be fascinating to read. Okay, next up I have A Women Who Changed the World, the Most Remarkable Women of the Last 100 Years. I don't actually know, does this have an author? I'm not sure. Anyway, this is like short little essays of 100 women who, or not 100 women, a bunch of women who changed the world over the last 100 years. It has everything split up by like genres, I guess. So you have humanity and liberty, science, medicine, technology, space, the environment, etc., etc. And I thought this was a pretty well-rounded book in terms of it pulled from a lot of countries, a lot of diversity of fields of interest and things like that, and I just generally had a good time with it. It was short, it was nice little introductory spurts that I thought were just fabulous. There were a lot of women that I did know about, there were some that I wasn't so sure should necessarily be included, but by and large, I really enjoyed this. Okay, next I have a book. I actually, well, we were buddy reading it ish. Me and Eden, she's one of my subscribers. She's actually just like a friend now, to be totally honest. We talk regularly, but we were reading Franchise, The Golden Arches in Black America by Marcia Chatelain. I'm not quite sure if she's finished with it or yet. Finished with it yet or not. No, I know she's not, but it was on hold at her library. That's why she didn't finish it when I did, because she had to return it, and she hasn't been able to get her hands back on it yet. This was so fascinating. So this is a history of like McDonald's and a history of civil rights in America at the same time, and you wouldn't think the two were really connected, but they are. So presidents like Nixon was mentioned and a couple others really were trying to sell black people on the idea of black capitalism being what they needed to pull themselves up out of the gutter, you know, whatever, that crap. And basically companies like McDonald's took advantage of that through franchising. So a lot of their white franchisors pretty much refused to have stores in predominantly black neighborhoods because there's a lot of crime in those areas, and the stores didn't get as much love as maybe they should have. But McDonald's really wanted to keep them open because they were their biggest revenue streams, I guess. So they decided, well, we need black people to franchise them then. So yeah, a lot going on in this book. This is one that I wouldn't mind reading again to take a deeper dive into it, because there's so much there that I don't think one sitting, one reading, whatever, does it justice. So yeah, I definitely recommend that if you are interested in civil rights and that kind of a thing. This is a totally different take on it, and it just kind of astounded me, to be honest, because I just never think about McDonald's being part of the civil rights movement, but there you go. Okay, next up I read No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is a book that has been on my radar for a while. I've actually been on hold for it at the library for like months, and it finally came through. So I read it, and it wasn't bad. It's isolationist, so a woman is trying to get home to see her mother. She goes to school in Colorado. Her mom is in a hospital in Utah dying, and she's trying to get there. There is a snowstorm. She ends up at this rest area, and she gets snowed in there with 4 other people. I think I have that count right. And things get intense. I don't want to say any more because I just feel like you should really just go into it not knowing much, although since it's being adapted for Netflix or whatever, I'm sure there's a lot of spoilers out there already. But it was different than a lot of thrillers I read, although I'm not crazy about the ending. Hence the 4 stars. But yeah, it was good. I see why it's being turned into a movie. It has cinematic qualities for sure. Okay, the final 4-star book I read. Oh, The Splendid and the Vile by Erik Larson, a saga of Churchill, family, and defiance during the Blitz. And while we're here, this will come up later. I think I gave this one like 4.75 or 5 stars. Clementine, The Life of Mrs. Winston Churchill by Sonia Purnell. So I read both of these in the same month, which was really cool because it was similar to how I read the Barack Obama memoirs and the Michelle Obama memoirs in the same month, because you're getting kind of 2 different viewpoints about a similar time frame. And I thought that was really interesting. So The Splendid and the Vile is specifically about the Churchill family during World War II. So there's a lot from Mary Churchill's diary in here. She's very funny, by the way. I found myself highly amused. You get some passages that, honestly, Erik Larson may have used this as a source. I'm not going to lie to you, because some of the passages are quite similar. This one, however, was more specific on Clementine. This is her whole life. And I didn't know anything about her early years. So that was absolutely fascinating to me. And then, like, she truly did love Winston Churchill. I don't understand it. I mean, her only real shortcoming that I can see is that she wasn't a great parent to her children. But possibly that's because she was parenting her husband. Good old Winnie. Never could live without a mommy. So, yeah, I mean, just strong woman. I don't understand. She has nerves of steel. I honestly don't think Churchill would have been worth shit had she not come into his life and kept him dedicated and motivated and well-fed. I like how I didn't even talk about the Splendid and the Vile. It's, I don't know, it's about the Churchill family during World War II. I don't know. You get a lot more of Pamela Digby. She's the Churchill's daughter-in-law. Their son Randolph? I can't remember. He's a piece of work. And Pamela was just so instrumental to the war effort. The family took her in. They ended up liking her more than their son, which isn't, you know, hard to do because he's not very likable. But yeah, I want to find a book. I know, I think it's this book, mentions her biographer several times, and I need to find that now because I want to read about her specifically. Okay, we're into 4.5 stars now, and there's only 3 here, so we'll get through this. Okay, first up I have The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This one is a thriller that I'm just going to kind of vaguely set the scene for because I don't like to give out spoilers. I love Simone St. James, and this has a lot of similarities to her 2 other books, which I've also loved. So if you liked those, you probably will like this as well. We have a woman, and her life's just kind of in neutral right now. When she was a child, she went through a pretty traumatic experience. She's recently divorced. Her job, she's just like a receptionist at a doctor's office. She's not doing much. But in her downtime, she runs a website called The Book of Cold Cases, where she writes about cold cases and true crime and things of that nature. And then one day at work, a woman walks into her doctor's office, and she recognizes her as this infamous suspect in a serial killers, a case of serial killers, a serial killing, whatever. Anyway, she was the main suspect. She was acquitted, but there's still lots of suspicious things surrounding that event. So yes, that is me setting the scene, and that's all I'm saying about it. Alright, next up I listened to it on audiobook, Confessions by Kanae Minato. This is translated from Japanese. It is also a thriller, but it's pretty unique. One of my friends that I used to work with and who is now a subscriber, she recommended this one to me, and so I got it. And each section is told from a different point of view. And we start with this teacher. She teaches like middle grade-ish. I think they're about 13. And it's her last day. She's quitting after the death of her daughter. And she is giving them this like farewell speech. And before she goes, she tells them that her daughter's death was not in fact an accident, and the people who killed her are sitting in that room. And then lots of things ensue. It was just like edge of my seat. And after the end of the very first chapter, like my jaw hit the ground. I was like, what? And then it just kind of like kept spiraling out of control from there. Excellent, excellent read. Okay, the last 4.5 star, whoops, things are falling, is The Personal Librarian by Marie Benedict and Victoria Christopher Murray. I really liked this book too. I did a review for it, so I will link it in the cards and in the description box if you would like to go check that out. But this is it's not so much the true story, it's a fictionalized version of events because it's historical fiction, but it does try to stick as close as it possibly can to the sources and what actually happened. But this is a story of Belle DaCosta Green. She was J.P. Morgan's personal librarian at the Pierpont Morgan Library. She basically curated the entire collection for him. She was very well known about town. She really made her way in Gilded Age America in these upper echelons of society. But what nobody knew is that she was a black woman passing as white. And she kept this secret her entire life, and she made a lot of money. J.P. Morgan included her in his will, and she was able to set her family up very nicely. And it's just kind of a triumphant tale, really. And I honestly think that Belle de Costa Green would be pleased with her representation in this book. Okay, 5-star reads, and then we're done. There's only 5 of them, and we've already talked about Clementine, so we only have 4 left. First up, Lucy Foley, The Paris Apartment. Oh my god. Okay, I love Lucy Foley, but this is the first book of hers that I've given 5 stars to. This book was like the gift that kept on giving. Every time a twist would happen, I was like, no way. But then it was just like more and more intense and convoluted, and by the time we got to the end, I was just like breathing heavy, sweating. It was a ride. It was a wild ride, man. Something to note about this, though, is like the prose is like very sexually charged. And I wasn't sure how I felt about that, but it really did add to just the overall, like, setting the scene. I don't know. It was just intense in all the right ways. So this one I'm also just kind of going to set the scene for you and not give too much because thriller. So we're following this woman. Her name is Jess. She has had to leave her situation in Brighton in England, and her brother is currently living in Paris, and she says, hey Ben, I need to come stay with you for a while. And he seems to be quite reluctant, but he gives her his address, and she makes her way to Paris. However, upon arriving, Ben's not there, and she doesn't know what to do. And she's also looking at this building and thinking, how can he afford this? And yeah, dramatics ensue from there. Alright, next up we have Entangled Life, How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Futures by Merlin Sheldrake. I buddy read this with Very Literary Carrie, and we had the best time. She and I just kept like voice messaging each other, and we were like, oh my god, did you see how crazy it got in chapter 4? And then that was interspersed with discussions about JFK conspiracy theories. So anyway, we had a very good time. This was fascinating. I truly believe that fungi can save the world. I'm not kidding. Like, usually I'm super depressed and I'm scared about the future and I'm questioning if I should even have children and all these things because global warming and blah 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 blah. But like, fungi, man, amazing. There's like the species of lichen that can quickly repair radiation damage, and so like could potentially be useful in further space exploration. There is a fungi that's called oyster mushrooms, and they can like live on like dirty diapers and cigarette butts. So they literally like they decompose that within a few months, which is just fascinating to me. I don't know, I loved every second of this book. Even the creepier bits where they're talking about the fungi that's like zombie fungi. If you've ever played the video game The Last of Us, it's like that. But yeah, oh my god, even if you are not typically a nature or science person, I still think you'll enjoy this because Merlin Sheldrake is really good at giving you the biology and then reeling it back in to things you can understand. So there's a lot of anecdotal things. He compares things to film. He tells stories about his childhood. Specifically at the end, there was this cute little anecdote he told about jumping in the leaves with his dad and then realizing, you know, the pile was decomposing at the bottom and asking his father all these whys. And then they basically simulated the environment in like a clear plastic bottle so he could watch it happen. Anyway, I loved this a heck of a lot. I think everybody should read it. Okay, we're almost done here, guys. I'm just going to talk about, well, we'll just do these one by one. This is Insomnia by Sarah Pinborough. This comes out April 22nd. Yeah, I got that right. So very, very soon. Wow. First off, thank you, Eden, for sending me this ARC. She won it as a Goodreads giveaway, and then she read it and she sent it to me, and I am so very grateful. Holy crap. This, like, sent me reeling. So again, this is a thriller and I don't want to give too much away. So essentially we have this woman. She is quickly approaching her 40th birthday. She is a lawyer who is on track to make partner. She has a wonderful husband, 2 wonderful kids, a beautiful home, just a great life. However, when she was a child and her mom was coming up on her 40th birthday, she went batshit crazy and tried to kill her kids. And throughout her childhood, her mom used to tell her that she's just like her and that she was also going to lose her mind. Yeah. So she becomes an insomniac in the days leading up to her 40th birthday. And some real creepy things start happening, and her sister gets involved, and it's a lot. It's a lot, but it threw me for a loop. I think if you like Blake Crouch, you will like this. And I'm going to go ahead and say that for the same thing for Behind Her Eyes, which is a book I immediately got from the library after I finished this. Also by Sarah Pinborough. This one was just as good. Oh my god. So in this one, just going to set the scene here as well. Our main character, whose name I've actually forgotten at this point, Louise, she has been divorced for a while. She has a son, and she goes out one night, and she meets this man at a bar, and they hook up. Then she goes to work the next day and finds out that he is her new boss. Yeah. Not only that, he brings his wife to the office that day. And she's like, fuck my life, and she runs and hides in the bathroom. Fair enough. Anyway, they work it out, and she continues to work for him, and I really don't want to say anything else. Like, I honestly don't want to say anything else, because, I don't know. It's just better to experience it, in my opinion. So, if you want to talk spoilers or something, let me know and we can chat. Probably not in the comments. We'll probably try to move it off this platform so nobody else sees it. But yeah, just let me know if you would like to talk spoilers and we can work that out. Okay, so those are the books that I read in March. This was probably very long and I'm a little bit sorry for it. I'm mostly sorry for myself because I still have to edit this. But yeah, go ahead and let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, if you want to read any of these, if you had a particular book in the month of March that you would like to discuss with me. Go ahead and drop that all in the comment section. I love to read the comments. I love to chat with you guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.